If you've been wondering how to buy real estate in Mexico, whether it's for a residence or an investment property, or maybe you're looking at Airbnb in Mexico so you can support yourself while living in Mexico, then this is the video for you because we are interviewing Amy Sedgwick of Destination Retirement, who has done all of the above. So we're going to be answering all of your Mexico real estate questions today, including what's it like to buy in Mexico versus the United States? How does it work if you need a loan in order to buy a property in Mexico? What's it like to just buy a lot and build in Mexico? What is the real estate forecast for Mexico? We're going through all of it. Plus, we're talking specifically about Merida, Mexico as well, which is where Amy has not one but three properties, two of which are Airbnbs and investment properties. So if this is something that you're interested in, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because on this channel we're constantly talking about how to live and make money in multiple countries so you can live anywhere in the world. Also, make sure to give this video a like. And speaking of making money from anywhere in the world, some people decide to do real estate and some people decide they want to be a little bit more mobile. So if that's you, then make sure to download our Make Money From Anywhere guide below, completely for free, where we're going to be talking about the 5 skills that will make you money from anywhere in the world. And spoiler alert, Amy has at least 2 of the skills on this free guide that have allowed her to acquire property in Mexico, but she could do it from anywhere in the world if she wanted to. So make sure to download that free guide below. All you got to do is input your name and email, and you will automatically get the download link to your inbox. And with that being said, let's get to the interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another Entrepreneur Expat episode where we're interviewing yet somebody else for our Expat Story series. Some of you may know her as Destination Retirement, where she does a lot of content about retiring from the United States to Mexico, and also having Airbnbs in Mexico and buying property in Mexico and walking through that whole process. Amy Sedgwick, thank you so much for being here today to share with our audience what they need to know about real estate in Mexico.
Hey, Amanda, thank you. And just hearing the introduction, I'm already exhausted. I can't believe I've gotten that far and done that much. It's been a very long process, but I'm happy to dive in for your listeners and viewers.
So before getting into real estate in Mexico, because we get asked a lot of questions about, hey, Amanda and Justin, how do we buy a house in Mexico to live in? Or the other question is, hey, Amanda and Justin, how do we find a house for investment? And we're like, we don't know, because we're in a bit of a nomadic stage in our lives, so we're just not looking into it. So that's why we brought you on. But before getting into that, you chose to purchase real estate and property in a very popular place for expats,
Yes.
which is Merida, in the Yucatan.
Yes.
So why Merida? Because there's lots of expat hotspots in Mexico. We have a video on that, guys. We'll leave it in the description if you want to learn about all the different hotspots. But Merida is one of them. So why specifically Merida?
Great question. Why Merida? So in the early 90s, I lived in Mexico in Nayarit, literally in a beachfront house for 3 years. And it was your mind. I paid $250 a month to rent this beach house. And I was there for 3 years. Of course, I was in my early 20s, and so I absorbed the language and whatnot. But there in the early 90s is where I adopted this love for Mexico. And yes, Merida is a very popular spot with expats, but it's also popular with other national Mexican people moving also to Merida. It's not just foreigners. And to me, it met so many criteria. It was a big enough city to where I felt like there was always going to be something interesting. I had things to do, great health care. And because, small beach town, I think I would just get a little bit bored after a while. But it was also not so heavily taken over by foreign immigrants living there. I am an immigrant to Mexico. That I felt like I could still be surrounded with the culture and the people. And how I came about choosing Merida is very interesting. So my uncle, I'm using air quotes, my dad's best friend, my Uncle Bob has a place in Playa del Carmen. And when I started thinking about my retirement and where I wanted to end up, Bob would say, "Oh, Amy, come to Playa, check out Playa." So I'm just home, where everyone starts. I'm sitting on my bed, I'm doing the searching, and I find websites and I'm looking at properties in Playa. And as much as I like a good beach town weekend, I just knew that a beach town wasn't going to be it for me. And literally on the drop-down menu, it's like, here's Playa and Cancun and Tulum and Akumal and Merida. And I just started clicking through them and I was like, whoa, what is this Merida? And that was in 2018.
It's so interesting that you mentioned Nayarit. We're actually going to be there next month during Thanksgiving weekend because we have
really?
a Mexican friend who manages Airbnbs
Oh,
in
fantastic.
Nayarit. So we were like, well, most of our clients are American or Canadian right now, so they're all going to be out of the office. So we're actually going to Guayabitos, like that area.
Le Guayabitos.
You lived in Guayabitos? That's what we're going to be. We're going to be...
I live just north of it. It's about maybe 2-3 miles north of it in La Peñita.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be staying at Guayabitos, and part of the reason why we're doing it is because one of the things we want to do. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I forgot to mention this off camera. Is we want to eventually start doing retreats for a lot of our business consulting clients.
Count me in, girl.
Yeah. So we're gonna start doing that. So we're also gonna go check out the properties while we're there because she's like, oh yeah, you could totally host clients here and stuff. And we're like, we're going to go test it out first, But it's interesting because we're making so many friends in real estate right now, both American, such as yourself, and also Mexican, because we're like, we would love to host retreats for all our business consulting clients. And then they get a tax deductible vacation.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So we'll be in Nayarit next month.
Excellent.
As a little mini vacation and also working through all the details of that for
and drop in the carrot, maybe Merida.
Maybe Merida, yeah. I mean, we were thinking Playa, Puerto Vallarta, like the typical stuff.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting that you mentioned that you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to pass on Playa because that's how I felt about both Playa and Vallarta. But it's because I'm from Miami. So I wanted something like completely opposite for a while. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, so Guadalajara was just kind of a surprise. Justin was already here, and I knew nothing about it. And then I came, and I'm like, actually, this is a really dope city, and such a beautiful city. It's really dope. There's always something going on. Because I'm from a huge city in the United States, I also, the beach town thing, we checked them out, just would have been I would have gone nuts. Because I'm just used to like constant activity. So I'm like, Guadalajara is like a nice little middle ground for now where it's like a huge city, but it's not Mexico City crazy. And it's cool weather and I don't have to deal with hurricanes for a while.
Exactly.
And then we explore this part of Mexico until we decide kind of what the next move is. So I kind of did the opposite of you. Like we came to the same conclusion, but I went to like a much cooler climate because I was like, I need a break from heat and humidity.
Yeah. Now, I do have to say, I'm not dissing on the beach towns or the beach life. I just have a bit of...
It's a different vibe.
ADHD. And I actually, I envy those that can take a morning stroll and then read a book and lay in a hammock. And, I might lay in a hammock for 15 minutes and then I'm like...
Yeah, that's kind of how we are too. Plus we run like businesses and we like running businesses. So it was like, we need like infrastructure. Like Sayulita, you're just not there yet. In terms of infrastructure. Playa, we have tons of friends who are online entrepreneurs that live in Playa.
Oh, sure.
But also because we both speak Spanish, we were just like, do we really want to be in Mexico hanging out with a bunch of English speaking expats?
Right.
Not really. We want to go like explore Mexico.
Yeah. I hear that.
Yeah. Okay. So you choose Merida, kind of twist of fate. You were just searching, kind of like my twist of fate of Justin just happened to be in Guadalajara, and then we went traveling around and picked it. And then comes the next question we get, which is like, okay, real estate. Now I know you do real estate in the United States.
I do.
So what's interesting is you've basically had to learn how to maneuver two different systems. So what is different between, buying and selling houses in the United States versus buying and selling property in Mexico?
Wow, we need we need like a weekend session for this, but I'll give you the
Maybe you'll be doing retreats at your Airbnb, doing weekend sessions on how to buy real estate.
We have a specialty market in the U.S. that's a completely different thing. So I don't really think it's super fair to try to compare apples to apples. So I'm just going to speak on purchasing in Mérida, my experience with buying in Mérida. It's the only place I've purchased property in Mexico. When I lived in Nayarit, we did not own at the time. And hearkening back to, being online, looking at home, I kind of had this feeling in my heart that Mérida was it before I physically ever stepped foot in that city, which is the capital city of the state of Yucatan. I think it's about 1.2 million people now.
I didn't know that. I guess most people would think it's like Cancun or something.
Oh gosh, no. It's
I hate Cancun.
huge.
Don't even get me started on Cancun.
Yeah,
Like,
I won't, but you can get to it by bus very easily now.
Yeah.
But I started that online looking, and I kind of felt this connection to Mérida before even going. And also before that, I was looking at San Miguel de Allende, obvious for the climate, the art,
Yep.
the culture, all of that. And I did not want to, I speak Spanish as well. I did not want to be so immersed in a town of people who are not originally natives. Not sure. That came out kind of funny, but
You didn't want to be with a bunch of expats. You wanted to be with Mexicans and actually experience Mexico.
yes, but in all reality, yes, I will spend time with a bunch of other people who are also expats or immigrating
course.
from
Yeah.
their home country, just because it's easy, it's natural, and you find a kinship. Okay, now let me wait. Oh, purchasing. Here
Yeah.
we go. Purchasing in Mérida, Mexico. The first house I bought was the most complicated. I had given my broker a list of properties to look at. Caution number one is do not believe every website is up to date. And for most of the country of Mexico, there is no MLS. So each website is going to have some that are exclusive listings. Other listings pop up on all the different websites. But once you understand which websites are reliable, just stick with those websites. Find your broker that's your person. And every time you see a property, their listing or anybody else's, ask that broker to get information for you. Because when I first started, I just peppered my broker with all these properties. What about this one? What about this one? Or I'd say, hey, I saw this one on Google Maps and it had a big 7-day on the sign. Can you call this number? And I was going down all kinds of rabbit holes only to find out that, they'd call me back and say, yeah, that listing is 2 years old. That sold 3 years ago. And it just wasn't updated. Now, there are a lot of very reputable websites, but you got to find the ones for the city that you're interested in. So once I understood that and I found like my person, it became a much easier process. So when I went back for a second house hunting trip, I had a list of properties I wanted to see. It was way too many for the amount of time. And in the U.S., I can show 5 to 10 properties in a day. And in Mérida, you might see 3, maybe 4 properties in a day. So don't be thinking you'll go on the whole whirlwind tour. So at the end of my 3rd day of house hunting with my brokers, Eric and Ivan, I had taken one off of my list just for time's sake. It was a 1-bedroom. I thought, and the photos weren't great. And I just thought, I'm really going to stick with the 2-bedroom. And at the last minute, I put it back on the list. We walked in the house. I looked at him across my broker from across the room, and I smiled and I nodded. And I'm like, this is it. And the homeowner was there. She was actually from the U.S. And I went and I grabbed her by the shoulders and I looked her in the face, in the eye, and I said, Andrea, I am going to buy your house today. I will pay full price. Please do not sell it to anybody else. Thank you. She's like, oh, we like you. Now, the problem with that house was it took me 4.5 years to actually close. And here's why. When they purchased it, the owners, they formed a corporation and the corporation purchased the house. instead of doing something straightforward that everybody does, and that's do the fideicomiso. Their corporation paperwork was not filed properly, and they had no idea until it was time to sell it. Absolutely clueless. So time to sell it, and we try to get a hold of their attorney that filed it, who had since passed away. So now so big, huge mess. My attorney, who I swear by, spent 4.5 years working with me. It just closed like a few months ago. I walked into my attorney's office and I pretended to faint. I'm like, is that the title? Oh my God. Now, I own 2 other homes. Both of those were purchased from local Mexican nationals. No problems.
So I'm hearing broker, I'm hearing attorney. One of the questions that we get asked a lot is, how do you find brokers and attorneys? And our experience has been go in the expat Facebook groups, right?
Yeah.
So that's a place to start. And also, honestly, just making friends. So it's like I was mentioning to you, like now we have a bunch of friends in real estate in Mexico, but we met them through like another party. You know, just because we're like integrating into the neighborhood and stuff like that. So what would you recommend to people? Because a lot of people, let's be real, right? There are scams in Mexico. It exists.
Yeah.
It definitely exists. And people are afraid of getting scammed. Like sometimes we'll have comments on our channel. I don't know if you get these, but we'll have comments on our channel like, don't buy property in Mexico because the cartel can take it whenever they want. Do you get comments like that?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. So how do you find reputable brokers, attorneys, real estate inmobiliarios, real estate agents, property managers, if you need one of those? What would you suggest so that people feel confident in who it is that they are hiring?
Sure. I think with the popularity of YouTube as it relates to real estate, I think that's another venue where people can go. Like if it's Merida, they could look at my channel, and I always got recommendations on attorney and broker. Whatever city it is, if you're looking in PV or wherever it is you're looking, you inevitably probably have a YouTuber that you follow, and perhaps they have some recommendations. But I love the idea, if you're not boots on the ground yet, to join a Facebook group or several in the city that you're looking to go to and ask for those recommendations. Because also within there, if you see the same name continuing to pop up, I mean, I wouldn't just take the first person that comes along. There's always going to be somebody that is promoting themselves, and that's fine. That's business. But other people referring to whom they've used and had a good experience with is probably the best way to go. I would look for websites that are updated regularly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And ground. You got to be in.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, when we started the YouTube channel, we started meeting awesome people like you. But we were like in Mexico for a good year before we started taking the YouTube channel seriously. And I'm now thinking back and I'm like, yeah, attorney, accountant, cleaning lady, massage therapist, like everything has almost everything has been through expat groups. At least before we were more integrated and knew more people and knew other YouTubers.
A referral.
Yeah. It was always a direct referral, and that's always where we had the best luck. Now, when we found this house that we're currently renting, which is, I'm getting a good question now that I'm remembering that story. A lot of it was just like word of mouth. Who do you know? And one thing I love about Mexicans is they will immediately drop everything and help you if you just ask them for help. So when we were looking for this house, we were in a holistic healing course at the time, and we just literally asked them, and we're like, hey, so we kind of got to find a place to live. Can you guys like help? And all our Mexican friends were like, yeah, we know this guy, and set up an appointment with that guy, and blah. And they immediately, I don't know what it is, these WhatsApp networks are magic, because they just know everybody. And it's a very community oriented kind of society. So if you just make friends with some native Mexicans and you ask them for help, number one, they will move heaven and earth. And number two, these are very well connected people.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Very well connected. That's a really good point. Back to Facebook groups. I would be a little bit wary about Facebook Marketplace and properties being offered for sale there. Not that they're not legit, but that's when you really want a good attorney. For example, I almost purchased a beach lot in San Crisanto, and I really wanted it. So I was really bummed when my attorney told me it wouldn't work out. And then I saw it on Jose Arteaga's channel when he was doing one of his drive-bys, and they were already building on it. I'm like, what? That's okay. But I would just be careful. And if you find something that you're dying to check out, make sure that the attorney checks it out before you even fly down and spend any extra time working on it, you know?
100%. So this question just came up because this time we've had comments about this too. We've had this experience. I'm wondering if you've had this experience. Building codes between Mexico and the United States. The two are not the same. So, and house inspections and all that stuff, the two are not the same. Let's just say Mexico is a bit more of a libertarian society when it comes to those kinds of things. So what should people be aware of when they're starting to look at properties, or the attorney should be able to help with those things. But what are some things people should be aware of? Because, for example, when we rented this house, like, the wiring was backwards. We had to, like,
so funny.
Oh, the whole house. We had to basically rewire the whole house because it was backwards. Or we've had people in the comments who also have had that kind of an experience. I don't know if it's a Guadalajara thing. I don't know what it is, but this has actually happened for quite a few people where they've rented or bought and they've had to do quite a lot of work on the houses because inspections are just not
right
as much of a thing here as they are in the United States. They're just not. So what are some of the things that people should keep in mind, and also some expectations? Should they budget for repairs, stuff like that?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. I've got so many places I can go with that. So when you buy a home in the U.S. and you have your home inspection period, you get to do all these. I mean, out here in the Northwest, it's like radon inspection, sewer scope, roof, foundation, all these things. In Mexico, you sign your purchase agreement. You put down 10%. This is just my own experience. 10% and that's like earnest money. It goes directly to the seller immediately, and it's non-refundable immediately. Like poof, it's gone. And then you wait to close. There really isn't inspections. Like, you buy that, here's the price. You buy the house or you don't buy the house. That's my experience. I do know that some brokerages will do a kind of inspection, but it's not the level of security that it is in the U.S. So just expect no inspections, or when you're at the house, open the tap, flip on the light switches, and do what you need to do. But also, repairing and maintaining things is less expensive than
100%
it is in the U.S. I bought, that first house, the one bedroom that was the big nightmare closing. And then a year later, I had to put in all new mini splits. And that was a third of the cost of what it would be in the U.S. So,
I mean, between labor and the rewiring, it only cost us maybe like $2,000 to pretty much rewire. So it's like nothing. Like, imagine if you had to rewire a 3-story house in the United States, like how much that would run you. Forget it. Like, it's not possible. But here was like, including labor, $2,000. So it wasn't like a huge deal. And we're like, okay, well, we spend the money that we would have spent on a WeWork or office spaces basically just went to rewiring the house. Okay, so good to know. Okay, now when it comes to finding properties, right? What is it? How can someone go about choosing the right property for them in Mexico?
Well, it depends on the objective, and there's kind of a 3-pronged objective approach. Is it strictly for investment and you're not going to live in it at all? Maybe go once a year for 2 weeks. Is it snowbird type property? You're going to be there in the winter and not be there at all in the summer? Or is this your full-time primary residence? And that's really going to drive your search, because from there you can, reverse engineer it, like my friend Amanda likes to do, and work backwards. So for me, for example, the house that I call the Garcia house, that was my little air quotes. I named it the Garcia house. That's the house that I'm going to live in. So I had to think about, what do I want for my life? 1 story. I wanted a casita in the back where you could get to it without having to go through the main house in the front. So I had all of these criteria, and it just landed in my lap. But how to find those things, I think, is to understand yourself first and what your needs are going to be. Like the two rentals, the two Airbnbs, they're in Mérida Centro. They're in the historic district. You can walk to the hip new gastronomic corridor. You can walk to the new La Plancha. It's all right there. Do I want to live in Centro? Undecided. My Garcia house is just a little bit north of Centro in a slightly newer neighborhood, in that it's not a 500-year-old neighborhood. That's how I got the casita in the back and all of that stuff. And then how to find them, that's really letting your broker know what your objectives are. And then you've got to, from there, once you've got your objectives, then you got to move to geographic. Like, what's your neighborhood? Where do you want to be? And the only way to really understand that is to go and visit and check out
Yeah,
the
boots
different
on the
neighborhoods.
ground.
Do you need to walk to a market? Do you prefer to walk to a market? For me, that is the best. Love walking.
Same. I did a Facebook post about this the other day. Just on my personal Facebook is where I have my random streams of consciousness that I post on the internet. And I said that. I'm like, you know what? One of my favorite things about Mexico is the fact that you can walk to markets.
Yep.
You can walk. I think we can walk to 1, 2, 3, like 4 or 5 where we are right now. And I'm like, I don't remember the last time we went to a grocery store. I mean, we did a video about Chedraui in case people needed to find specific things or imported things, or because that's a thing. It happens. But like, we don't go there every week. We're hanging out at the markets, getting fresh meat and fresh eggs and fresh fruit and fresh vegetables. And it's just such a massive difference to your overall quality of life. And I think mental health.
Yeah. Huge difference.
One of my favorite things. Okay, so make sure that wherever you're living in Mexico, you have access to a market that you can walk to, because it is life-changing.
It's changing, and I highly recommend it. But if that's your priority, like once you figure out your priorities and then working backwards from there, for some people it might be proximity to specific kinds of healthcare facilities, and which is very good in Mérida. But that's what I'm suggesting is the second item, is to geographically figure out what's your neighborhood. So much so that by the time you actually start to look, your broker knows, listen, I want a 1-story house, I want room for a swimming pool, and I want an off-street parking space, and I want it in the neighborhood of Garcia Jimenez or Itzina. Go. and then it's go time.
Cool. All right. What is the situation on, for example, loans? Like, let's say somebody's listening and they're like, oh, that sounds great, but everybody's just swooping up cash and I don't have all the cash. In the United States, depending on where we're at with interest rates, I don't even know right now. But in the United States, you know, people are accustomed, like, oh, I could just get a mortgage, right? In Mexico, you can, from our research, let us know. But from our research and also talking to our Mexican friends, it's like way harder to get a mortgage here, even for Mexicans. They basically need like family co-signers, from what we've been told, right? So what would be the process if somebody is, you know, they're like, that all sounds great, but like, I don't have cash, I would need to take out a loan. What does that look like in Mexico? How does that work?
Yeah. Okay. Some of my knowledge on that is a little bit limited. First place that I would start is if you have property in the U.S. and you can take out a home equity line of credit, that might be your best rate to take the cash and buy a house in Mexico. There are companies, very few, but there are a couple of companies that will finance foreigners investing in Mexico. And one company is called Moxi, M-O-X-I. I had a long video conversation with them. Of course, they were trying to sell me on it. Because I was thinking about taking out a loan to do the construction on the Garcia house. So not only home loans, but construction loans are available. And here's what Moxie had to offer. The rate was it was somewhere in the 9 to 10% range. It was the closing costs that were really high. And if I remember right, it penciled out to be about $16,000 US for closing costs. Then there's no prepayment penalty, oddly enough, which is good because you want to get rid of that monkey. But they would only do a minimum loan amount of $250,000. So if you only need $100,000 for your building project or whatever it is, you would still have to borrow $250,000.
Right.
And that's like, ouch. I mean, I guess you can
Yeah.
take that remaining and stick it in an interest bearing account, but scary.
Yeah. So basically, easiest thing would be like if you have a house in the United States, take out the home equity line. That's going to give you the best rate, and then use that to buy the property in Mexico. Yeah, because we were looking at like interest rates and stuff like that in Mexico, and they are high.
Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, on loans. Yeah, we're like, y'all are complaining in the United States right now about how high the rates are on loans. You should see Mexico and how high those are. However, you also get way higher interest in the bank accounts here than you do in the United
Yes.
States. So I guess it all
Yes.
evens out,
Yeah. Speaking of
Yeah.
bank accounts, I use Wise to get
Uh-huh.
money transfer, but Wise has just upgraded to where you can hold your money, like hold it in whatever
Yeah.
currency. So I'll have some US dollars in there, and as soon as I see the peso hit like 19.95 or even 20, I'll quickly convert some over. And you can
Yeah.
actually set it to where it automatically does it. Like I could say, hey, when the peso hits 20, buy $5,000, and it'll do it
Oh, that's really
automatically.
smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, normally
Right.
we use Wise too, but I don't think, well, our business account, there's some money being held in there because sometimes we have clients who are Canadian or from other currencies, and then we'll use Wise for them as a
Mhm.
business account. So
Yeah.
there's some money that's just collecting interest, but we haven't tried that for the personal.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty cool.
noted. I'm going to let Justin know because we're doing that too. Like every time it hits 1920, we're like, time to convert into pesos. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's part of the game.
Yeah. I do know that there are other bank loans available if you're a resident, or even better, if you're a national and you've held a bank account for a long time. I just don't know much about it because it's so far in my future.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can get, from what we've been told from our Mexican friends, it's just not as easy here to get credit as, for example, it would be in the United States.
I know.
So many of them have told us, like, yeah, when we bought our first house, like our mom was our cosigner, stuff like that. So, and that's pretty common here because it's just not, I think there was like a history where the banks were not behaving the way that they were supposed to, and they were in cahoots with the government, and it was like a whole thing. So then they had to get kind of strict. And then the story that the banks are always saying is like, we're just trying to avoid fraud. Like that's what they're always saying. So who knows what the real story is? It's just not as easy to get a mortgage here as it, for example, would be in the United States. And then if you're a foreigner, I think you're actually getting charged more in interest than a Mexican would be, which makes sense. So, this is just learn how to play the game, y'all. It's different in every country. Okay, so you also have Airbnbs, right? So those are for investment. What is it like to manage Airbnbs in Mexico? Because, for example, a lot of people will come to our channel and they're like, I want to make money. I need to figure out how to sustain myself while I'm living in other countries. And one of the things that comes up a lot is Airbnbs. But from what Justin has explained to me, because he used to manage Airbnbs, like the fees and the taxes and all that stuff also depends on what country you're in and what laws they have and all that kind of stuff. So what's it like in Mexico for the Airbnb kind of short-term rental market?
Yeah. Well, it's there, and there's room for more. I have to say, even though people think that the market's just flooded with Airbnbs, but with how many people visit Merida, there's still room to invest in short-term rentals, mid and long-term rentals. It is not easy. I didn't just scoop up a property and go, yeah, I'm an Airbnb this, make money hand over fist. Because I'm absentee for the moment, I have a property manager. I pay him a flat fee per month. And then there's pool cleaning, house cleaning, but then there's all this other stuff that comes up, the cleaning of the mini splits. Like I got a little leak in my roof right now. And every time I get a little message on my phone, the Airbnb icon with the little one, like I have a message, there's always that bit in my heart that's like, what's wrong with the house? And I had a guest in there during the last hurricane. We were untouched, which is really nice. It's very hard to manage from afar. If you're going to be living in the same city, which ultimately I will be, that's why I set all of this up, then I think it'll be different. I'll be able to be more hands-on. I got very fortunate. I have a very good property manager, and I trust him 100%. Even at that, I have to stay on top of a lot of things. It's also not as much income as I thought originally that it was going to be. So the first house that I bought, that little 1 bedroom where I almost didn't even go look at it, that was my first Airbnb. And it's a 1 bedroom, but it's very spacious, king size bed. It's always getting booked. And there's like always something that needs doing. Then the 2 bedroom, which is the luxury rental, is coming up. It'll be available for booking starting November 15th. I'm just actually finishing construction on it. That's another subject. Put that on your little memory scale there. But as far as Airbnb and taxes and fees, before I got my RFC number, so I could pay taxes like a local, I was being charged taxes through Airbnb. It was a very nice service. I didn't have to worry about it. However, on every booking, they would charge, one of them was 16%, and the other was something like, oh, I can't even remember right now. It was ridiculous. It was like 20% of the gross booking fee. And at the end of the day, I was like, well, then why am I even doing this? I mean, I was just doing all this work to break even. If that's the case, I'd let a friend stay in the house and forget about it.
Yeah.
But once I got my RFC number, the taxes went to 8% and 4%. And Airbnb pays them. And then I have a bookkeeper and I pay them about $75 a month to do my bookkeeping, which is definitely less than the non-resident, non-RFC number bookings.
I should note this is also a difference. RFC, for those who don't know, is like your tax ID number in Mexico. And you're looking at like a half a day at the SAT office. SAT is like the Mexican IRS to even get your RFC number. And I did do a video on this when I had to go do it. All right. And I did document it. So I will leave it down below because I'm like, I don't think I've ever had to go to the fucking IRS office in the United States to do anything. But here it's like you have to physically go. And again, they say it's to reduce fraud. So just FYI, that's a little different here than perhaps what you may be accustomed to in the United States.
And plan
different
for a whole
systems.
Day. And plan for a whole day.
Plan for a whole day.
Plan
We
for
had
a
an
whole day.
attorney, so it was like half a day, but plan for your entire day to be gone. Whenever you have to do anything administrative in Mexico, just the whole day is gone. Just plan for it.
Yeah, it's your one task for the day. Anytime it's
Yeah.
something, for sure.
I did manage to get 2 tasks done that day. So SAT office in the morning and open a bank account in the afternoon. I
True.
challenged myself to see if I could do it, and I did it.
Ah.
I almost didn't make it, but I made it.
That's another thing just about life in general in Mexico and anywhere in Mexico is like your tasks for the day are 1, maybe 2 things. And other than that, it's a leisurely stroll home. Whereas in the US, I'm like, okay, yesterday I was like, I went to the doctor's appointment. I went here, I went there. I did all this stuff in one day. And I'm just like, check mark, check mark, check mark. And in Mexico, it's a whole different thing.
Did I get the one thing done today? Because it took all day to get the one thing done.
That's a giant check mark. So good for you. Back to Airbnb and the fees. It took me a while to really understand how expensive it is for the end user, for the guest, because Airbnb has fees. And while the guest might see like $119 a night, that's my 1-bedroom house. And there's in their mind, they're thinking a number and they go to check out and it's a completely different number, much higher. I had somebody message me. They're like, why is it like this? And so I jumped in and I looked. And all those fees, they don't pass on to the host. That's not your money. That's Airbnb's money. And they also remit your taxes. So that's very nice. But I decided to go with direct booking. So I've launched my own website called amyscasa.com, where somebody can go and direct book. It would be the same nightly rate that they see on Airbnb without all the fees. So
We'll make sure to put that below. It's a lovely website.
thank you.
By the way, because we checked it out when we last chatted. All right, 2 more questions that I know people are dying about.
Okay.
And one that really I just noticed, I'll get there, right?
Okay.
Because there's something that Justin and I noticed in you in terms of planning your escape from the United States that we have not noticed in other people.
Oh.
So I want to make sure that we exemplify that because you're a really good example of what to do if somebody has a business. So we will get to that.
Okay.
So the other thing that people want to know is like, okay, well, what if I buy a lot and I just want to build on the lot? What's that going to run me? What does that look like? What's that process? Because that's a question we get too.
No, Valid
Yeah.
question. Valid question. One, make sure your attorney checks the land for any liens or forgot the grabam and his liens. I forgot the word for any other family members that can come forward and buy the lot. So free and clear title, even though you don't buy it like traditional U.S., is a really important thing. But yes, somebody can buy a lot and build on it if the utilities are there. You're not going to find a lot in anywhere in Mexico where it's like in the historic center of whatever town that is. It's going to have a structure on it that needs to be torn down. Once in a blue moon, you'll find one without a structure, but you have to build in the tear down fees. If it's in a Pueblo Mágico and in a historic center, you're going to have to abide by the historic guidelines, the architectural preservation guidelines. That's more time consuming, can be a little bit more expensive if you want to push your permits through. And it's just not as easy to go and build. Now, that being said, with how much all of these major cities are growing, you're probably going to end up, if you're a land lover, you're probably going to end up a little bit outside of Central anyway. So the permit process won't be as hard. And you can pretty much do what you want on your piece of land. Price-wise, it's going to vary wildly from area to area and building product. But, I've got friends in La Paz, and they can build a house for 150, 200, 250. Now, that is a very, very scaled back house. But my house on 66 that I'm just now completing, the building cost was 4.7 million pesos. So you can,
Which would be what in dollars? Where's my? Oh, I'm using my phone to film. I can't do the quick conversion on the app.
What's so funny? 4.7. What is that? We're looking at 250,000,
Okay.
more or less, to build it. And I spent about at least 20 decorating it. But I put in really high end, actual comfortable furniture. I will say this: if you plan on delving into the rental market and you're going to offer something furnished, now I'm going to look at the dot. Have comfortable furniture. Oh, it will make all the difference. I had to recently get an Airbnb for myself in Merida when I was there because my house was booked and I had a little kerfuffle and needed a place to stay. And I spent, I don't know how many hours looking online to find myself an Airbnb. I'm like, I just want a normal couch to sit on at the end of the day when I come home. And it's hot and I'm tired.
Yeah.
It's like
Merida's hot.
comfortable bed, king size always, and a good couch.
And extra pillows.
Extra pillows. For sure.
We're extra pillow people. We're extra pillow people.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about buying directly from owner? Because, for example, last year we were traveling through Sayulita, speaking of beach towns in Nayarit and all that stuff. We were in Sayulita, and then we ended up, this was before we even knew where we were going to live. We were doing the digital nomad thing.
Yeah.
So we were working out of a lot of co-working spaces for a while we were traveling around. And we ended up meeting this lady who was running a co-working space in American from Chicago, running a co-working space in Sayulita. And she's like, oh, I used to do real estate in Chicago. Now I'm doing it here in Mexico. And what she told us, and I would love your thoughts on this, she goes, you see all this like areas around here in Sayulita and like just outside of Vallarta, things are like developing, but they're not fully infrastructure there yet. Oh, they're selling lots like crazy.
Yep.
Right? And you can do like buy direct from owner and not even have banks involved, is what she told us.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
Bank?
I don't know if you can do that or not. That's just what she told us. And she's like, yeah, I run, I'm looking at all these properties. That's how we got the co-working space. Well, it was a farm and they converted it into a co-working space. Yeah.
I do think real estate in Vallarta is a little bit different, but
True. It depends on the
I
state.
can buy
Yes.
directly from a Mexican national all day long.
Yeah.
All you really need in that instance is a very good attorney to make sure that there are no liens that can't be cleared up and that there are any family members they have to look back X number of years that would come forward and lay claim to it. But yeah, as long as I tried last year to buy a property direct from an owner and there was an old government lien on it and the government program no longer exists. And so we couldn't get it removed. And actually in the title to that piece of property, it said this house cannot be sold because the government program was supposed to go, the house relinquished back to the government program. And I was gutted because I really, really wanted, I was moving heaven and earth to get it. I worked on it for probably 2 years. I stuck a note in the door. That's another thing. When you see dilapidated property, write a note in Spanish. If you don't speak Spanish, have a friend of yours who does and put their phone number. And like a year later, she called me and I just thought, oh, this is meant to be. I met them. I met with her several times, went to the attorney, and it all came down to we couldn't clear the lien.
Yeah.
Still get it. I still want the house, but so be it. I would have bought directly from her hand easily.
Yeah, so something to keep in mind as well, because we've been told by a few real estate people that that's something that can be done. And what's your view on just like the real estate market in Mexico in general? Because, for example, we're about an hour from Ajijic and Chapala, and that market's on fire. Like, I mean, it's a good deal for an American, right? But they're getting more and more and more expensive. The properties over there, granted, you could get a nice chunk of property. It just may not be as inexpensive as people maybe assume for what you're going to get in Chapala and Ajijic. And then we also hear, for example, and we've seen it when we go more to those beach towns that we were mentioning earlier, that there's still a lot of undeveloped land in Mexico near coasts. You just need to know where to go. So what are your thoughts on like the overall real estate market and situation in Mexico? Because, I mean, this place looks like it's booming. There's people moving here from all over the world.
Yeah, all over the world and from within Mexico as well. Like people maybe from Mexico City wanting a place at the beach. I think it's only going to continue to grow, just like any other place that's a fabulous place to live with great culture and people and what they do for everybody and good health care. So it's going to keep going. I really like the idea of investing in neighborhoods that are just pushing the city limits. They're about to put, or they're talking about putting another periférico, or is that what it's called? The circular around Merida to expand the Merida city limits. So buying in a little bit outlying neighborhood, if you're comfortable speaking Spanish and being a little more in the mix, which I think is the sweet spot, then it's always going to be a good investment as long as you're in a place with good climate, medical, and safe. Because there are some parts of the country that aren't safe. There's some parts of every country that are not safe.
Oh, let's talk about safety for a second, because that does come up pretty much every other day. I'm sure it does for your channel too. Yeah. Merida is known as one of the safest cities in all of Latin America. I think a lot of people don't know that.
It's actually known as the second safest city in all of the Americas. We're talking the Americas. So the entire continent. So we've got Quebec is number 1. And Merida is number 2. And you can dig deeper into that study. Maybe I can send you a link and you can put it on there if you want. But then within the country of Mexico itself, Merida is considered number 1. Why that is, there's stories. I don't know. All I know is that when I'm there and I go to my favorite jazz club and I want to walk home at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I don't even think twice about it. I'm very comfortable. I feel very safe there. I feel safer there than I do in my own city.
You're in Washington, right? You're in Seattle or Portland?
Portland, Oregon.
You're in Portland. Oh, God. I just saw a documentary about what's going on there yesterday. And, oh, my God. Situation in Portland is kind of scary.
Yeah.
It's similar to LA. We were there last year, and I'm like, this is bad.
Yeah. It's a little heartbreaking because I grew up here,
Yeah.
And as a young teenager, I would get on the bus and I would go downtown and think that it was cool and fun. And I don't even want to get on a bus. And that's horrible. A bus should be a very safe
we were
place.
just watching. Yeah, people ask us, like, don't you feel unsafe in Mexico? And I'm like, I feared more for my life in LA last year.
Yeah.
When we were visiting Justin's family than I have ever felt anywhere in Mexico. Like, where the dangerous spots are. Like, don't get involved in things you shouldn't be. Like, no one's going to Sinaloa right now. Don't get involved in things you shouldn't be involved in, and you're going to be fine. But in terms of, like, walking around and community and stuff like that, like, I feared way more for my life in Los Angeles than anywhere I've ever been in Mexico, and I've traveled quite extensively throughout Mexico.
Agreed.
Yeah, just, pay attention to the news and know where there's shit going down and avoid those places. That's all.
Exactly.
So, and don't get involved in things you shouldn't be getting involved in, just like you shouldn't be doing it in the United States. It drives me crazy when people are like, you might get this too, but I know some people in Dominican Republic get this. We're like, you guys only show the good parts of Latin America. You don't show the barrios. And I'm like, well, why the fuck would I do that? Like, I'm not going to go hang out in the hood in the
Right.
United States. Why am I going to go hang out in a barrio in Mexico? Like, that doesn't make any
Right.
sense. Like, make it make sense. I don't know if you get those, but we get those sometimes. And I know some people in the expats in the Dominican Republic get that quite a bit. And they're like, make it make sense. You wouldn't hang out in those neighborhoods in your own country. Why would you go do it in another country?
Yeah, that's just uneducated commenting.
Pretty much, yeah. Okay, so final question that I have for you, because when Justin and I chatted with you on the phone, right, because we did an old school thing where we were calling people. I know it's like unheard of in the age of social media. Unheard of in the age of social media. But we will make phone calls when we have extra time to get to know people in the community and stuff like that. One of the things that we noticed with you that we have not noticed with a lot of other people trying to plan a trip to Mexico is that you've been very methodical about this whole process. You are nearing retirement age. It's a little different for us because we're in our 30s and we basically just started over. And we had online businesses. We just packed up our shit and we left. So different situation. But we talked to a lot of people in the community who are nearing their retirement age. They have businesses. A lot of people don't know that you don't do the Mexico YouTube thing full time. You have an actual real estate job.
Very big.
Right.
Yeah.
In Portland. And they got to figure out, how am I getting rid of this business, or who am I leaving it to, or like, am I selling it? Like, and they haven't thought about any of these things, right? They're just like, I want to go to Mexico. And we're like, okay, well, you got to figure out how to get rid of this business. Either it's somebody selling it to somebody, which right now it's not sellable, right? Based on what we know, right? Or somebody inheriting it, or something, right? Like we got to start making some plans instead of just it being airy-fairy up here, like a thought to escape, is what we're noticing with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And with you, it was very different. With you, it was very methodical. With you, it was like, I have my 5-year plan and I have these systems in place, and then I'm going to, I forgot the word that you used all of a sudden, but basically you're exiting, right? Like you're making your plan, to exit what you're currently doing, and then making your plan to exit the United States. So what we've noticed is that some people are really terrible at exit planning.
Yeah, that's a thing, exit plan.
That's a thing for both business and moving to another country. So what advice would you have for people in that regard? Because like I said, it's one thing to be in your 30s with no kids and you're starting over and you have online businesses and you just pack up your shit and you go, right? It's another thing entirely when you've built up a whole business or career for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
You have properties, maybe. That's a whole different ballgame. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah. Do you want me to touch on what my 5-year plan is first?
Sure, it's
an
fantastic.
example? Oh, well,
Yeah.
great. I didn't know how much time we had.
Yeah.
So my 5-year plan, I used to talk about, wanting to exit real estate. I always have to reel it back even a little bit farther. I distinctly remember one day I'm driving around in Seattle, getting ready to host an open house. I've got on my little Ann Taylor suit back in the day when we actually wore suits. Thank God we don't anymore. And I see a woman get out of her, Cadillac-ish type car, and she's maybe 75, 80 years old, and it's wet, and she's dressed, it's raining, she's dressed impeccably, and she's putting out an open house sign. And I just had that feeling like, I don't want that to be me. In those years in my life, I want to be retired or traveling and doing things on a hobbyist level, not still having to put out open house signs in the rain. And that image just kind of stayed with me. So when I moved back home to Portland in 2017 to help with my parents, I decided to develop a niche market as far as real estate. I sell floating houses. And then after a few years in that, I decided, I'm turning 50. I'm looking at my finances. Where am I at in my life? And where can I go? And I don't have kids, so I don't have to do the follow the grandkids trail that so many do. Respect. That's just not my life. So I started looking again at Mexico because I had that 3 years there and I really, really loved it. And then I started to devise a plan. I called it my 5-year plan. I had never put an actual end date on it, so it was perpetually 5 years away. Well, this is ridiculous. So I basically flipped up in the calendar to 2025, and I picked my birthday just at random. So 10/10. So that's my birthday, 10/10.
You just had a birthday.
I
Happy
did.
belated
Yes, I'm
birthday.
56. So you know,
All
for
right.
the purpose of this video. So at 10/10/2025, I will be able to put the pin on my 5-year plan. My 5-year plan is to have 3 houses in Mexico, all without a mortgage, 2 for rentals and 1 for me to live in. And that's how I will live. I'm not a digital nomad. I am developing the YouTube channel. I'm hoping that becomes a source of income. And, you know, as far as what people want to do for income, if they are deciding to make the choice to move to Mexico, I just have to say there's a lid for every pot. I went with real estate because it's still my passion. It's what I know. It's what I understand. And I'm having a blast, you know, decorating or like, ooh, I found this little table. Let me buy that. But so within my 5-year plan, I didn't just have a money tree in the backyard, right? So I had my big house. I refinanced it. And with that amount of money, I bought one of the houses. And because of the refinance, my mortgage increased by almost double. So I took in a roommate. I had a roommate who was in his early 80s. He lived
House
with me.
hacked.
Yeah. He lived with me for 2 years. He ended up passing away. And at that time, it was the perfect time for me to be like, okay, I'm done with the big house. I sold my 2,000 square foot house. I bought a tiny house and remodeled it. It's 550 square feet. And then with the proceeds of that sale, I was able to do more with Mexico. So up here in the US, I live very, very frugally, and I put everything toward my plan. When I first decided, like, here's what my life is going to be. I want 2 houses to rent and 1 to live in. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I basically set the intention that, like, this is what it's going to be. And then I just started taking the steps. And it's just that I'm so into the power of intention and how it really comes to be. And I have, you know, an area on my wall when I open my cabinet where my shoes are. I have a Post-it note system that I use. I actually did a video on my Post-it note system. And that's
I'm going to have to check it out. I love a good Post-it note system.
I
I'm going to have to check it out.
I do too. And different things work for different mindsets. And that's how that came to be. It was literally every time I'd make a commission, I was rolling some into pesos and sending it either to the building project or the property management or whatever. It took a very long time. All in all, I'm going to say it's taken about 10 years. So I have 2 exit strategies. Surprise. One exit strategy is how I'm leaving my business in the US. It's very, very hard for a broker to walk away from real estate.
Yep.
Because the past clients that come up and these people become like family to you. So I have a business partner that I've trained. She's amazing. I'm bringing on another broker January 1st. And next year, they go to the forefront of the business, which is not my name, by the way. It's Floating Homes
Smart.
Portland. Yeah. What's that?
Smart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't sell your name. But, you know, unless it's like Sedgwick and Sons or something.
Yeah.
So those 2 will go to the forefront of the business next year, and my pay will be reduced by like half of what I'm used to doing. So I'm getting real serious about this. And also I'm putting my own health and relationships a little bit more in the forefront. Money isn't everything. So I'm literally giving myself a pay cut of half. And this is my business.
Yeah, but I suspect that pay cut will be temporary. So we have another YouTube channel based on mindset because, you know,
Yeah.
we do a lot of marketing and sales training, but, you know, none of it matters unless you know what's going on between your 2 ears. You've been in sales a long time.
That's
you
so
know
true.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of it matters
No,
unless you
never.
understand what's going on between your 2 ears. So we started another YouTube channel just for mindset stuff and intention stuff and all that. Precisely because we've been in sales
Yeah.
for so long and we can see, you know, when somebody takes off versus when they don't. Usually it's something going on up here.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised because I went through something similar a few years ago where I was like, I'm going to put the business that I had going on hold. Really, I burned it down to the ground. But because I was done. I had my midlife crisis a little early.
George.
And then he ended up going through a similar situation and then we met somewhere along that journey.
Oh.
Yeah. But basically, I started putting my relationships and my health and all those things first because in the United States, it's a lot of grind. And it's
Yeah.
a lot of productivity. And when I started doing that, several things have started happening. One, I met Justin. Two, my relationships across the board improved. Three, my health improved. And now, right, even though I took a pay cut, now is when we're starting to see that money start coming up again, because you took care of your internal state first.
Yeah.
And then when you get out of the hustle and grind, this we cover more on the mindset channel, and you just give yourself some space, right, to think and figure out what your next move is, then you start making moves that are actually in alignment. And that's when you start getting these money making ideas that just pop and they hit because you gave yourself the space. So I would not be surprised if that pay cut is a temporary situation.
Well, that's okay. I'll invite that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take that. So that's part of the exit strategy. To go back to that, the other part of it is the next year I'll take a smaller cut and a smaller cut until I completely fade away and they own the business. And I will keep the YouTube channel because that's my baby. And then my other exit strategy is actually exiting out of the properties in Mexico to where I have a house, because it takes to escape paying a ton of taxes.
Yeah.
You can sell a property in Mexico once every 3 years. So after I'm here for a while, I don't know when I'll start it, but I'll sell one, and then 3 years later, I'll sell the other to the point where I just have my house. And then I can imagine that my happy place is to find a little house, fix it up, dial it in, furnish it, and then offer it for sale.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, you had it totally planned out, because we'll talk to people who have businesses, and I assume you've got some pretty solid systems in place in the real estate in order to be able to make that transition easier for who's coming in. Because we'll talk to a lot of people who are in their 50s and they have businesses, and we're like, so how are you exiting? So we can, make this move.
There's a good book about exiting, at least real estate, but I'm sure it applies to many others. It's called The Golden Handoff.
Yeah. All right. We'll have to make sure to read that. I mean, we're not anywhere near that time, but this time around when we were rebuilding businesses, we were like, even if we don't sell it, build it as if you might sell it someday.
Yeah.
That's the key. And a lot of people don't do that. So thank you so much for being here and sharing all your real estate wisdom. Tell the people where they can find you, because you have 2 YouTube channels, you have Airbnbs in Merida, like you got a lot going on. So where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me at Destination Retirement on YouTube. That's everything Mexico and Merida in specific. And if you're just curious and you want to look at it, I sell floating houses in Portland, Oregon. You can find that on YouTube at Floating Homes Portland or floatinghomesportland.com. And my direct booking website for my Merida rentals is amyscasa.com.
We'll make sure to have everything linked in the description for you guys. But literally, I love your YouTube channel, actually. But I found the Destination Retirement one first. Then I found the Floating Homes one. And then I became a little bit obsessed. Because I'm like, what a niche.
I have to say one more thing, though.
Yeah.
You actually asked me for advice, and all I did was blather on about myself and my own plans. So my advice for you, dear listener and viewer, is to set the intention first and then start making steps toward it, and it will all fall into place.
100%. You put the intention out first, visualize it, do all those things, start following step by step. I always said that literally I would write in a journal, I'm married to the love of my life, and we're traveling all over the world. Hello.
What?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we have a whole other YouTube channel just for that stuff, because and also we're getting trained in a bunch of stuff while we're here in Mexico, because all our Mexican friends are moonlighting shamans. So they're like engineers and real estate people by day and shamans by night. So
shamans by night, news at 11.
Shamans by night. So we're learning a lot of, we're getting trained in some really cool stuff, and when we do retreats and stuff like that, it's probably going to be more in alignment with those things. We're just kind of trying to figure out how it all works together, but we started another YouTube channel to start planting the seeds for that stuff, so that the algorithm wouldn't get all confused.
Yes. Yeah.
But 100%, set the intention, and I'll put the link to that YouTube channel below as well if you guys want more of the mindset stuff and how what's going on between your 2 ears actually affects your results. Because it's not woo-woo, it's neuroscience.
Right. Agreed.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. We will have everything linked below, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you.